Well, hello and welcome back to the Better Bid Calling Podcast. As you all know, my name is Joshua Houston, and it is my pleasure to be with you today. What you may not know if you're listening just to the audio version of this is that I am by myself today. We have no guest, unfortunately, and that is because I have a rather major announcement to make regarding this podcast. If you are following along on Competitive Auctioneering Facebook page that's run by Peter Garris, who has been a guest on this podcast and is a wonderful man who I very much appreciate and respect very highly. I would encourage you, if you're not part of that Facebook page, to go be part of that. Peter is very, very good about posting every auction contest from all around the world. You can see the winners there. You can see footage, live streams, things like that. And then, of course, there are association updates that are made on that page as well. And it's just really, really a wonderful thing that he does. But I shared this on the Competitive Auctioneering Facebook page that we would have a special announcement today. And when I give this announcement, I hope that you will find this to be a good and positive thing rather than a bad thing. I know it's going to be disappointing to several, but the Better Bid Calling Podcast is coming to a close. This will be the last episode of the Better Bid Calling Podcast for at least the foreseeable future. Now, before you start crying and get terribly upset, just know that there are more people that I would like to interview. There are more people that I want to have on here to talk about their auction careers, to talk about the auction chant, to talk about auction contests. But at this present time, I just simply do not have the time to continue to do this. And I know it seems like it doesn't take a lot of time to do something like this. You know, we have maybe an hour of a podcast, and then it takes probably that long or maybe longer to edit and make sure that everything's uploaded in the right spot and all of that stuff. I'm a one-man show here, and as I've said multiple times on this podcast, I don't make a dime from doing this. So it's not like this is something that's coming back and reciprocating an income for me. It's something that I do just very simply because I love sharing information about the auction industry. I love the auction industry. I've worked in the auction industry majority of my life, and I very much appreciate these professionals who have come on here and shared about their careers, these champions who have been so gracious and so humble in sharing their stories. I'm so appreciative of that. What I'm more appreciative of is the positive feedback that this podcast has gotten. I want to find, real quick, I'm going to look on my phone here. I wasn't planning on doing this, but I want to find for you a message that was sent to me the other day that was just really touching. And let me see if I can find the message here. Okay, so this is from Cameron. Cameron, if you're listening, which I know that you do, I very much appreciate this message. I hope you don't mind me sharing some of your words. And Cameron is an up-and-coming auctioneer. He's worked for the fire department in the past and now has gotten his auction license, and he is learning his chant. And Cameron sent me this message, and he said, and I'm going to paraphrase just a little bit, but he said, I see you, as far as I know, as the only one progressing the industry outside of an auctioneer school in this platform, or with your reach, and I really appreciate what you do. In the last 4 months, I'm on my second listen through. He said, please keep it up, and then ask for other podcaster resources. There are several other resources besides me. There are several other people who are doing such great things to progress this industry. And I really think that the rise of the media shift that's been given with the National Auction Association and other associations has been really, really helpful. And so I just want to offer these resources to you. If you're trying to build your chant, if you're trying to learn your auction chant, what is it that you can do as a new auctioneer who's just come out of auction school? The first thing I would recommend is get the book, is it Before the Hammer Falls or After the Hammer Falls or When the Hammer Falls? Something about Hammerfall. that the National Auction Association puts out. That would be a great resource to you, and I apologize for not being able to call the name right off the top of my head. The other resource would be Virtual Auction. If you type in Virtual Auction Software David Whitaker, that will come up. There is a auction platform called Virtual Auction, not to be confused with this, but I have a review of David Whitaker's Virtual Auction software that's on my YouTube channel. You can go check that out. And I think it's still accessible, and might even be more accessible now as having been updated. I think David did that, and if he didn't, I know that he's planning on doing that. Appreciate David Whitaker so much. He's a personal friend, and I'm very happy to have had conversations with him on this podcast and elsewhere. So go check that out. It's a really good tool for practicing with random bids. Auction Syndicate is a YouTube channel that goes through the basic chant and gives you some bid calling practice there with some items and some scripted bidding, we might say. So that's a good resource to you. So there are resources out there. There are many resources, and more resources are coming up the more that this is happening. So who knows? Maybe with the conclusion of the Better Bid Calling podcast, somebody else will take up the mantle and will make a podcast by auctioneers for auctioneers, really with the intention of developing new auctioneers to learn the craft. I feel like I owe you an explanation as to why this is happening. And just to be completely fair, I know that I don't owe anyone an explanation. Okay, I understand that, but we've built up a following, and I just feel the need to be open and honest with you about what's going on in my life. I now have several responsibilities, more so than I've ever had in my life. At the beginning of this year, I'm recording this in my church office. You all know, if you've watched the podcast, you know that I am a full-time minister here at the Salem Creek Church of Christ in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That is my full-time job. It is my primary source of income. And for the past 9 years, I have done that with another minister. Well, in January, at the end of January, that minister has gone on and gone to other places to preach, and that left me with the majority, well, I won't say the majority, with all of the preaching responsibilities and with all of the ministerial responsibilities at this congregation. We're not a small congregation by any means. We're not the biggest in the world, but we're certainly not small. And so the rise of my responsibilities here is taken away from some of the other things that I enjoy doing. More than that, back in November, you all may remember me telling you the stories of in November, my wife gave birth to our daughter, and she is now 3 months old and growing every day, and she's doing really well. We appreciate the prayers and the thoughts that you've given us and given her. We very much appreciate that. But, you know, being a dad, as most of you know, being a parent is something that takes up a lot of your time and a lot of your attention. And so I'm giving my time and attention to that, more so obviously than I had previously. And as she continues to grow and continues to need more time and attention from me, I refuse to be an absent father. I refuse. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to let my job, whether it be ministry or auctioneering, override my role as a father. My number one role in this world, outside of being a Christian, is to be a husband to my wife and to be a father to my daughter. And I refuse to let either one of those go by the wayside in favor of a career. So I've had the rise in responsibilities at church. I've had the coming of a beautiful daughter. And I've also taken on some other roles and responsibilities within the academic world. Many of you know that I have my doctorate and that I teach for a couple of universities. I'm teaching now for McGarvey College of the Bible. I'm doing some adjunct work for some other universities as well. I'm working as a dissertation advisor for a couple of doctoral students, and that is really taking a lot of my time as well. So, what does that mean for my role with auctions? At present, the two companies that I work for, one of them seems to be, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I've worked for the past several years, and really it's the company that gave me my start, and it's the one that I have been with the longest, and it's the one that I will still continue to be with as I have opportunity. But at present, it seems that Gary Realty and Auction is doing more of their personal property stuff online, which seems to be working really well for them, and I am so thankful that that is an avenue that they can use. Certainly am looking forward to seeing that grow. They're selling real estate online, they're selling personal property online, and I do not have a real estate license, so I am not legal in the state of Tennessee to sell real estate at auction. And so now the majority of our personal property is being sold online, which is fine, but that leaves me without the ability to go and work a sale because I'm just not needed as a bid caller or bid assistant. And so that's kind of been put on the wayside. We probably won't have a whole lot of sales to work with them this year, maybe a couple gun sales if that. But, at any rate, that's that. So that's kind of taking care of itself. I still plan, as long as they'll keep me, to work with TriStar Auction Group in Lebanon, Tennessee with Daniel and Nicole Pruitt. We actually just had a sale previously this week on February the 26th as I look at my calendar and remind myself of the date. It was a great sale. In my opinion, one of the better ones that they've had. They had great equipment. A lot of the stuff was in good condition and sold really well. And we worked hard for our consigners. I think our buyers are going to be happy. And so that was wonderful. So as long as Daniel and Nicole will keep me, I'd love to continue working with them as a bid caller. At the end of the day, though, I had to look over what I was doing, and I'm going to have to let some things go. So many of you know that I do other podcasts besides this. I do the Content Warning podcast with my friend Nathan Foster. Nathan runs that podcast. Really, all I do is jump on and talk. So that doesn't take up any of my time. Primarily, I do it while I'm at the office. And then I have another podcast called Deeper in the Word, which is just recordings of my sermons. We're trying to get it worked out, by the way, too, where my sermons can be on Paul Ramirez's podcast, Western Ag Life podcast. We've done a couple of those, but for some reason, when I send him recordings, it's not working, where he can't download it. So we're going to have to cross that bridge and figure that out. But again, I already have the recordings. It's not doing anything else. What takes up a lot of my time is doing this podcast. And at the end of the day, when you have so many things going on and you have to really wrestle with where do you want your life to go, some things are going to have to be cut, and this just kind of took it. So unfortunately, I am going to have to cut this, and that's the announcement that I want to make today. One more thing that I want to say about this is I realize that this podcast has given me opportunities beyond what I could ever imagine with the auction industry. This podcast is the reason, and no one will ever come out and tell me this, but I am convinced that this podcast is the reason why I am an instructor at the Nashville Auction School. And I appreciate that. It's given me a voice and a presence to be able to help and train new auctioneers, especially with their chance. It's allowed me the chance to go to numerous auction conventions, association conventions, and give lectures about the auction industry, about your basic chant, about crossing auction categories, about leadership in the auction industry. I've been to Arkansas, I've been to Oklahoma. Where else have I been? There was somewhere else. I've been to Kentucky. That's really what got all this started, was being invited to Kentucky to their conference. And so please know, if you are on a board of an association and you're looking for a speaker, I am still more than happy, as long as my schedule allows it, I'm more than happy to go to your association and talk about the auction industry. I'm happy to talk about the basic chant. I'm happy to talk about bid calling and live bid calling and crossing auction categories and leadership in the auction industry, and even livestock auctions and maybe even equipment auctions, as I have opportunity to work with TriStar and professionalism. I'm happy to come and talk about those things. Please do not think that the stopping of this podcast means that I'm just not ever wanting to do these things at all. If it's within my schedule and within my ability, I would love the chance to come to your association and speak. Of course, we have to cross that bridge when we get there, but at this time, I realize that the cessation of this podcast probably means that those opportunities will not be readily given to me, because I will not be a public voice in the auction sphere anymore. And that's something that I've struggled with, because I've so enjoyed getting the message out. I enjoy it when, and I hope this doesn't sound arrogant, but I enjoy it when people call me on the phone. They say, hey, I was with somebody the other day and we were talking about the podcast. That really means a lot to me. It means that word is being spread about this podcast, and I really love that. So At the end of the day, though, something has to be cut, and I understand this podcast has given me opportunities beyond what I could ever imagine, and I'm just not going to be able to do that anymore. Something has to give. Please also know that it's not just the podcast that I'm giving up. There are things in my personal life, too, that I'm giving up, and I've really had to wrestle with this. It's hard to give up something that you love for something that you love more. And so I hope that I have your support in this. If you're a believer, I solicit your prayers, and I really would appreciate that as my wife and I try to navigate our new life with a new daughter and a new career, or an extended career. My wife is starting back to work, and she's taking on a new role at her job, and it's a big time of adjustment for us. So we solicit your prayers, and we appreciate you and love you very much. I want to conclude this podcast. Of course, it's not going to be long at all. But I want to conclude this podcast by telling you some things that I said at the beginning when I started this podcast a couple of years ago. And at that time, it was a Facebook page, and I was making little 1-minute Facebook videos talking about the basic chant and some things that you need to do to develop your basic chant. There are some things that I want to, some advice I want to give you that has stayed the same, and some advice that has changed over the years. One of the things that has stayed the same is please, 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 if you're wanting to develop your basic chant, focus on rhythm and breathing. So don't get in a hurry, sing your numbers, be very rhythmic, and if you struggle with rhythm, don't try to focus so much on the chant as you do the song. So focus in on the auction song, make it rhythmic, make it sound like a bouncy ball or a yo-yo going up and down instead of rocks in a blender, which is what a lot of new auctioneers want to sound like. Volume does not mean increased rhythm. So just because you yell into the microphone does not mean that you have that pleasurable chant. So focus on making your chant crisp and clear. The speed will come later. Speed is obviously not something that we want to focus on with developing our chant at the beginning. But one thing that I've changed my mind on with the development of the auction chant and the auction industry is I'm on record as saying that I believe that if we don't preserve the live bid calling method of marketing, that it will go away in favor of online. And I in some sense I stand behind that, but what I'm seeing, and probably because we're distanced enough now from COVID that we're starting to get live again, what I'm seeing is an increased appreciation for the live bid caller. And that means a lot to me, and so I'm less skeptical now of the live bid calling method going away as I was previously. So I hope you'll join me in promoting the live bid calling method of marketing. I'm still going to do that. I know you're going to do that as a bid caller yourself. And even if you're not a bid caller, even if you just like to listen to the podcast because you like the auction industry, use the live bid calling method of marketing, whether that is live simulcast, whether it's live in person, whatever, but utilize the live bid caller. I think you'll be pleased with that when you do. So with that, I just again solicit your prayers. And I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart that I really do love each and every one of you, and that it just means so much to me whenever I hear people say that this podcast has helped them develop their auction career and their auction chance. I can't say any more than that. Again, let me just reiterate that we do have some guests that we are going to have on, but it may be 2 or 3 months from now. It may be longer than that before we have them on. And even then, we might only have 1 or 2 more guests before this podcast kind of goes by the wayside from my end. Maybe there's somebody who wants to start their own and do something similar. That would be fine, and I would certainly promote that and be a cheerleader for that. But I very much appreciate you, and until we see each other face-to-face one day, happy bid calling, and just remember, our favorite word, sold. I love you all. Thanks for supporting the Better Bid Calling Podcast.